Welcome to episode 6 of my 2023 training diaries. After leaving Cockermouth in the northwestern corner of the Lake District, I spent a couple of days exploring Hadrian's Wall, a fortification spanning 118 kilometers from east to west, which served as a defensive boundary for the Roman Empire against the barbarians of the north. I then drove about an hour south to Kendal, which was my home for the past week as I continued to recce and train for the Bob Graham Round. Kendal is another picturesque market town and home to Kendal Castle. It's also known for its Kendal mint cake, which has powered many an adventure in the fells.
This is a restricted area. There is no return.
Audrey then joined me this weekend. I picked her up in Manchester, and we've settled in here in Keswick for a final week in the Lake District. Keswick is right in the heart of the action here in the lakes, and it's where the Bob Graham Round starts and finishes. And in case you haven't been following along, the Bob is a fell running challenge here in northern England, which involves summiting 42 peaks in under 24 hours, which, depending on the route you choose, ends up being about 106 kilometers or 66 miles, with around 8,200 meters or 27,000 feet of elevation gain. And I've dedicated the entire month of June to preparing and training for the challenge. So since first coming to you from England here in episode 5, I've finished my reconnaissance of the entire route, some sections more than once. And this culminated in a 73-kilometer weekend with over 6,100 meters of elevation gain. And you can take a look back at all of my training by searching for me on Strava. I also tagged along to pace 2 runners through a leg on their Bob this past weekend. But in this episode, I'm going to bring you footage from my first big recce mission of legs 1 and 2 with my friend Rowan, which I teased out last time. And I'll also talk a bit about some of my gear, nutrition, and logistics for my attempt this coming weekend. So it's Sunday morning, and I just arrived here at Dunmail Raise, which is the end of leg 2. I'm going to meet up with my friend Rowan. We're doing a car drop here. Then we're going to drive back to Keswick to start our recce of the first 2 legs of the Bob. But I can see a crew over here parked on the side of the road. I suspect waiting for a runner or 2 to come over the hill on their own Bob. So you guys have 2 runners coming in?
Yep. They set up at 11 o'clock last night. From Moot Hall. It's now 7:20. We've had a night sitting in vans, waiting, feeding, that sort of thing. So we're scanning the skyline for the guys coming in. Yeah.
And when do you expect them?
We expect them 4 minutes ago.
Okay.
It's exciting just doing this side of it. You know, I love it. They had to go last year as well, and it's just great. You know, it's life affirming, isn't it?
Yeah.
How are we doing?
How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, we're leaving from Dunmail Raise, which is the end of leg 2, and we're going to go to Keswick and start at leg 1, and then we're going to run all the way back.
Nice.
About probably about 8 hours, I think.
Yeah.
42k, I think about 3,000 meters of vert.
Nice. So this is what, a 22-hour schedule?
22-hour schedule, yeah. So 8 hours for legs 1 and 2.
All right, let's do it. There it is, Moot Hall.
Yeah. Skiddaw over there, first one we're going to. 80 minutes.
So it's 8 a.m. We've just started on our recce of the first 2 legs of Bob Graham Round. From Moot Hall, of course, the official starting point. We're heading up Skiddaw here, our first summit. We are expecting some thunder showers today though, which is why we aim for a little bit of an earlier start. And of course we have our hard shells and some other gear just in case. Water is going to be a challenge on leg 2. Leg 1 does have a couple of sources to pull from, but we'll be carrying at least 1.5 liters for that second leg.
For the most part, we're going to walk anything that's significantly uphill, any kind of gradient. We're going to run the flats, obviously run the downs. The main thing is just to get an idea for the pace once we've done Skiddaw. Going off way too hard up Skiddaws, a pretty common mistake a lot of people make, and then they get to the end of leg 1 and realise
they're gassed.
They've done themselves a bit too much, yeah. So take it easy and settle into a pace in about an hour or 2.
Yeah, nice. The first thing I noticed about the Lake District is its lack of trees.
I think the Lake District used to be fully forested before we used to farm it and cut all the trees down for farming and grazing. So while it is natural, it kind of isn't at the same time. But there's been a lot of efforts, I think, recently. It's a big push to try and reintroduce, you know, native woodland and native plants and animals back into the lakes.
Yeah.
I think this is literally the first rain we've had for about 6 weeks.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it just started to rain. It's been so dry, just bone dry. But it was really humid today. You could tell the rain was coming. It's actually a nice relief. One down, 14 to go.
Yeah, pretty much any other time of the year, other than when we've got a dry spell like this ground is just slop.
Yeah.
It'd just be shin deep, bog, heat, marshy land.
Pretty slow going.
Yeah, very slow. You gain so much time on a bob if you've got it like this.
Yeah, you can see how this would just be, you just sink into your knees here. Feeling very lucky to have the dry weather that we have right now.
Gained a couple of minutes back on that leg.
Nice. Just filled up some water down at that river there. Looks more like a creek, but apparently that can be like waist high. And we're making our way up to Blencathra now. Got a 45-minute climb. So just gonna put our head down, get this part done.
Come on in.
You guys? Blencathra. Okay, so now down Hulls Fell. This will be the most technical part of the day for sure. So that's our next summit there, pretty much straight up. All right, so start of leg 2. We're on our way up to Clough Head. We're expecting that to take about 50 to 55 minutes. We've refilled our water. There's gonna be basically no water on the entire next leg, pretty much until close to the end here. But it's getting really hot, so we'll see how long this 1.5 liters lasts. Pretty much just straight up from here.
Yes, this trod I don't think was here about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And there's a bit of controversy about whether it's a good thing that kind of fellow runners, especially Bob Graham, are wearing new trods and new paths into the landscape. But every single one of these paths has been made at some point by people moving over the ground. So I don't know what's the difference between somebody doing that over the last 10 years and a path that was formed 50 years or 100 years ago. I'd rather see, you know, a bit of erosion caused by people using the land in a worthwhile and productive way.
Sure.
Than, you know, to see a new Premier Inn get stuck in the middle of Keswick.
Yeah.
Which is happening.
Finally a breeze. Whew. Oh, feels so much better. We were just roasting on that climb. So that's where we came from over there, Skiddaw, and then across to Blencathra, down Hallsfell there. And 55 minutes, right on target.
See Leg 3 over there, or parts of Leg 3. Got Bowfell, the kind of pointy one over there. Then going up to West Pike and Great End, and I think you can see Scarfell Pike as well. And all the way around, and all the way back.
One leg at a time.
Yeah.
So we're heading up there, straight across to Great Dodd. So pretty much 28 minutes, hang on again. So we're pacing it well.
Heading up there to Whiteside, straight line it off there and find the trod.
We soon came to a strange sight for England, a tiny ski resort perched high on the fells.
Yeah, the ski lift on Raise. I think it's got to be the only ski slope in England, and you've got to walk all the way up the mountain with your skis before you get there. There's no driving to the resort, no hotels. Quite an eccentric English thing to do. This is Helvellyn. That's the third highest in the lakes, and it's the highest point you'll hit until Scarfells at middle of Leg 3, the end of Leg 3.
So we're up another minute and a half on that leg. Hey there. How are are you guys doing? It's hard to tell sometimes where the actual summit is, so always best to tag both when in doubt. Yeah, summits are coming much quicker here on Lake 2.
Yeah, so that's Still Fell, first summit on Lake 3.
Yeah.
When you get to Dunmail and you look up at it, it's massive. Just remember when you're down there looking up at it, how little it is from here.
Yeah. Perspective is everything.
Yeah, that's Fairfield, so it's just out and back to Fairfield and then up and over Seat Sandal and then we're down and done.
Looks big from here.
It is big.
Yeah.
It is big, but it's only about 40 minutes and 10 to 15 of that's descending down, so it's not that big, it's not as big as it looks.
Yeah, okay. This kind of heat just makes all the difference in the world when doing a route like this. Easily raises your heartbeat by 4 or 5 beats, and you really have to drink, and it can make it hard to eat as well. So today what feels like a sort of 22-hour effort is really giving us closer to a 23-hour pace. Let's see what it's like on the day.
Yeah, this heat's knocking my stomach a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm usually cocky about how I cope well in the heat, but today's just been brutal. There's the climb up Clough Head really. There's no wind, absolutely just still, baking hot. And then I've been struggling to eat over that whole ridge and ran out of water until we got to the tarn, so it's a tough day. But we're nearly there.
Last summit for the day. Close to 3,400 meters, 42K. It was a big day, and this is only 2/5 of the round, but it's still a big day.
That is the worst I have ever felt on a run, I think. That was brutal. Absolutely brutal day out.
So as I said, I've since recce'd the entire route, so I'm feeling pretty confident when it comes to navigation. Although the warm and dry weather that I've enjoyed for my first couple of weeks in the lakes has turned to more typical wet and cloudy skies, which can make navigation much trickier, even with GPS, something I learned while pacing Leg 3 of the Bob on Saturday. At least though, it's much cooler, so I shouldn't have to deal with the heat. The forecast this coming weekend is looking like partial sun with some intermittent rain, so it could be ideal running conditions. I've gone back and forth quite a bit on shoes, but I think I've landed on using the Salomon S-Lab Ultra 3s, because they offer not only protection from rocks underfoot, but I think they'll provide a lot more traction on the boulders than something like the S-Lab Pulsar soft grounds, even though those would be a little bit better in the mud. I'd also considered using the S-Lab Genesis, but the Ultra 3s have just really grown on me in terms of fit and comfort for longer efforts. I'll also likely run in a pair of the new Salomon Bonatti shorts, which I picked up just before I left Canada. These are similar to the Bonatti jacket in that they shed water really well and are surprisingly light. There's no mesh liner, so I'll be wearing them over a pair of boxers as usual. Now for nutrition, I'll be eating a fair bit of real food at the checkpoints every 4 or 5 hours, which Audrey's going to have set up for me at the road crossings in between each of the 5 legs. I'll also refill my bottles and restock my run food each time as well, and for this run I'll be relying mostly on run nutrition from NAC, including their waffles, bars, and energy drink mix in my bottles, which includes protein and amino acids. You might remember that I used the same approach during UTMB last year, and NAC is sponsoring me again this season for this and a few of my upcoming events, so I really appreciate that support. The Bob is not something that can be done alone, and in fact, one of the requirements for an attempt to be ratified by the Bob Graham Round 24-Hour Club is that you have a witness for each of the 42 summits. And in practice, runners will typically have 2 pacers with them at all times, and usually a different team for each of the 5 legs of the run, as much for safety as anything else, but also to help with navigation and even in carrying the runners' water and extra gear, so they're basically acting as mules. I'll then also have 2 road crews, Audrey in a car handling most of the transitions, but also a second team in place for Wasdale, which is the most remote location, so they'll be heading out there the evening before. So it really does take a small village or hamlet to make this happen. And it's been a lot of work coordinating my team of some 13 pacers and crew members. This is why I felt it was so important to pace for Keith and Ross this past weekend on their Bob as I did, so that I could not only get a first-hand look at how this whole thing comes together, but also to pay it forward, which really is the spirit of the Bob and the incredible community that surrounds it. I'll be starting my attempt this Saturday, July 1st at 8 p.m. London time, so midday if you're in North America. And you can track me online using a service called Open Tracking, and there'll be a link in the description for that as well. So wish me luck. This has been a really fun process. I've really enjoyed being able to spend so much time focusing and preparing for a single goal. Now it's just a matter of bringing it all together and executing. So I'll tell you all about how it went in the next episode.